Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across the fantasy universe, welcome in to Championship Weekend. It is the Fantasy Football Hustle. I'm Brian Drake from FightingChanceFantasy.com. Welcome back, Dwain McFarland. We've missed you, my friend. You got a slick new haircut. You angled your camera a different way. How you been, man? You took a week to go ski with the family. What's going on?
Yeah, man, I'm just trying to shut off 2020, right? It's 2021. It still kind of feels like 2020, so I'm just doing everything I can, Drake, just to kind of shake off 2020.
Well, folks, we have a great show for you this week. There's not a lot of fantasy going on, let's be honest. So, let's talk a little football here. We've got a lot of what ifs, like, hey, where could this guy go next year? How cool would it be if we saw this guy go to this offense? What do you think about this coach? So we wanted to bring in maybe the funnest guy in fantasy that we know, and that is Drew Davenport from FootballGuys. Drew and I go back a little bit because he and I were in the same Kings Classic draft in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So he and I got together. We got to drink a few beers. He already has his open. I just cracked mine. And we really had a blast out there in Canton. He is the mayor of #Narrative Street, and he is the auction specialist at FootballGuys.com. We know those guys are always very nice to us over there. So we want to welcome him in. Drew, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I am great. Thanks for having me, guys. It is an honor to be on this show. You guys do such a great job. I love being here.
Look at this setup behind you here. We got to talk about this for a minute. You've got 38 TVs. Do you actually sit there and watch all these on a Sunday, or what is this setup?
Oh yeah, baby. So the small TVs have a little tiny direct TV box Velcro to the back, and the big one is the one down here is just like a cable feed out of the wall. So I got 4 on the Sunday ticket and 1 on a cable feed that we watch a local out of. But yeah, my brother and I have been watching 2 TVs for 15 years on a football Sunday. And a few years ago, I started stacking TVs up in my apartment, and it led to this. And I have a very understanding and amazing wife who, when we moved into our house, she actually said, hey, look, we're not stacking up a bunch of TVs in our basement. Let's do this thing right. And we did it right. So I just got 5, not 38, but hey, one can dream. I'll go up to 6 or 8 sometime in the future.
And if you guys want to see this, you're listening on the podcast. We appreciate it, but you got to go over to youtube.com and check out the Fantasy Football Hustle YouTube page. Hit like, subscribe, comment, give us your man cave configuration in the comments. I'd love to hear it. So, Dwain, you've been out for a little bit, so I just kind of want to get your take as we go into championship weekend here. We got Bills Chiefs. We got the Bay of Pigs, and I wasn't the only one that thought of Chris Berman here. We've got Green Bay, Tampa Bay. So let's just start off the show that way, talking a little ball. What do you think of these matchups this weekend?
Yeah, man, I'm excited about both games. I know early on, in the offseason, we were on Josh Allen as a fantasy asset, but we were very hard on him, as an NFL quarterback. And obviously I think he's proved like pretty much the universe wrong, unless you were just already on him. So, I mean, I'm excited, really excited about that game. I'm hoping Mahomes plays. I mean, I'm sure he will. So you just get Allen versus Kansas City. I think that's, the one I'm the most excited about. Obviously Green Bay, Tampa Bay, you get Brady versus Aaron Rodgers, obviously 2 greats, in their own right. Buffalo, Kansas City is more like the new school. Green Bay, Tampa Bay's more the old school. But just as far as, the matchups go, I think they're 2 really, really good matchups. I mean, you've got 2 teams in Buffalo and Kansas City that can play man, they can play zone, they can pressure the passer when they need to. Both of them have shown they have no ifs, ands, or buts. They got no questions about just coming out and throwing the ball all the time, right? They're like running the ball. What's that? they're very willing just to, put the pedal to the metal. So I think that game, obviously Kansas City is the favorite, to win the game. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, right, if Buffalo wins the game. I basically think that Stephon Diggs is pretty much unguardable at this point. Kansas City is willing to use double coverage more than some teams, and they run man as much or more than any other team. But when the Bills are facing man coverage, Stephon Diggs has targeted almost 40% of the routes that he runs. So I expect Diggs to be very, 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 very active. Not that that's any surprise to anybody, but when they face man coverage, it's even more than what you typically see from the Bills with zone. So if the Bills want to have a chance, if the Chiefs want to have a chance to slow down Buffalo, they're just going to have to figure out, how do they handle basically it's all of the comeback routes and stuff that, Diggs runs, it's just, and that's really helped Josh Allen this year, right? Because you've got a target that's not moving horizontally or vertically down the field. You've just got a target that's coming back to you. Right. And so that helps in itself, with Josh, Allen and his accuracy. I'm not saying that's everything to do with Allen's accuracy, but that's part of his improvement is just some of the things that they've done with a receiver that can create separation and create some easier type throws, especially against man coverage. So I'm excited to see that. As far as, Kansas City's offense, I don't really know that we have to say anything. I don't care who you put on Tyreek Hill. If he's healthy, you can't cover him. Tre'Davious White, it doesn't matter. He can't run as fast as Tyreek Hill, right? He can jam him at the line. He can do some different things, but they're going to have to double Hill. And as soon as you go to doing that, or you decide, we're going to go more zone, well, then that's when Travis Kelce kills you. Both that's going to be a great matchup. And then Green Bay, versus Tampa Bay, like if I for whatever reason, I don't know why, I don't know what you guys think, but it's like, I really hope we see the Bucs versus either the Bills or the Chiefs. I just feel like the Bucs offense, even though it does struggle with the Saints, like the Saints gave them problems all three games all year long. But outside of that, they've been pretty good. Now Kansas City can give them some of the same challenges. They can run a lot of man coverage, which you notice that's really where the biggest struggles came last week. Michael Thomas wasn't able to beat man coverage. Their best man beater really is Emmanuel Sanders, and he and Drew Brees just aren't always on the same page. Their deeper passes, which Drew Brees isn't quite as good at anymore. And, the Bucs had a very specific plan to take away Alvin Kamara in the passing game, because typically, when if the Bucs, come out and if the opposing team comes out and runs more, zone, and you're thinking about, talking back about the Bucs, whenever they run more zone, they'll go more underneath, they'll hit, Antonio Brown, they'll do things like that. But as far as, the man coverage that they could see with Kansas City, it could be a problem, but really New Orleans is the only one that's been able to, and it's the Marshawn Lattimore thing. He really does do a great job for whatever reason, against Mike Evans. So it's like that takes away Mike Evans, and then you got to deal with everything else. But for whatever reason, man, I just really hope that it's the Bucs and not the Packers. As much as I love Aaron Rodgers and I love the things that he's done this year, I still feel like they're an offense that it's like, if you could isolate Devontae Adams and just basically say Allen Lazard, Marquise Valdez-Scantling, Robert Tonyan, which they've in that running game, right, in the play action, beat us. I just rather take my chances, with having a really good Super Bowl, with having, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, in a passing game, Gronk with Tom Brady. I just feel like that's the better chance for the more entertaining game. I could totally be wrong about that. The Green Bay has a great offense, but I feel like it's a little bit more limited, right, in the number of weapons, especially if you end up facing the Chiefs.
Drew, I'm now a table-carrying member of the Bills Mafia. Being that I live here in upstate New York, and everybody here is now buying Bills gear like it's going out of style. And if you've looked at Bills gear, it's mostly Zubas, and it is out of style. But they're not good against the tight end. They're tied for fourth in the league in points allowed per game. They give up 15 points a game, tied with the Browns. They do have athletic linebackers. The linebackers are getting healthy now with Milano and Edwards. And I'm just curious, do you think anybody else besides Tyreek Hill, like, I just want you to give me kind of the big picture on this game. Like, Mahomes plays, we know he's going to play. Forget all the nonsense about the concussion. He's playing. Like, this is just going to be a crazy shootout, isn't it? Like, this is going to just be a fun-ass game to watch.
Yeah, people are talking about the game earlier in the year, and I just think you got to throw that out. That's just
right. What was it, like a Tuesday or Wednesday or something?
Yeah, it was just a weird game, and I agree with you. The tight end thing, it's funny. You watch that Bills defense partway through the year, and they just were very uninspiring. And it was odd to watch. And then you realize, well, Trey White was banged up a little bit, and Milano. And you mentioned Milano, and gosh, that guy's so important. And if you watch them play since he's gotten healthier and healthier, you notice the big difference that he makes. Just plays here and there, sure tackling. You notice how big he is to their defense. So, yeah, but I agree with you. It's going to be – I am so happy. I was sitting on the couch last weekend talking with my wife when the Chiefs-Browns was ending, and I was just frustrated at the fact that the Browns might get through because Mahomes wasn't in there. Mm-hmm. And I really want to see these two quarterbacks go at it, because these are two defenses that should be respected. They're solid defenses, but man, I want to see Allen and Mahomes work on them. And it has the feel of that to me, like you're saying, Brian, that it's going to be putting up some points. I do think that people don't ever talk about the Chiefs defense. Mm-hmm. And I think they're strong. I think that they have a little bit of injury issues in the back end right now, but I do think that people underestimate that. So we could end up with this lower scoring game than we think. But honestly, I keep coming back to these two guys are playing at such a high level. Yeah, man, 35-31. How's that sound?
Well, I've told this to all my Bills friends here in upstate New York. Tom Brady's going to break your heart. It's going to happen. It's going to be Brady against the Bills, and he's going to do it to him again and send him to another 25 years of misery. But, here's the thing. You and I have this running joke about Darrell Williams.
Yes, 10-16, we got there.
Yeah, so Darrell Williams is just a total scrub, like journeyman. He's not great, but whatever. You and I played him like the same week, and he scored a touchdown or two, and we've lost our mind. And now, whenever he plays and gets touches, we tweeted each other. There's a real possibility that this game could be a Darrell Williams game. Lev Bell, the DNP, he's banged up. CEH is banged up. So if I don't know, we can get in maybe some DFS talk here. How much do you think their offense changes, guys, with a Darrell Williams, maybe Darwin Thompson versus Le'Veon Bell or CH, or does it not? Because everyone just goes, these guys can't run anyways. It's just a passing game.
Well, I here's the thing, Brian. I understand that Darrell Williams isn't the most talented guy in the field, but there's something that he does for the Chiefs that they love when it comes playoff time. And that is, he is super solid in pass blocking, catching the football. And it's kind of like Gus Edwards in Baltimore. When they hand him the ball, they know that he's not going to dance around and get dropped for a 4-yard loss. He takes it up into the seam that he sees, and sometimes it's 2 yards or 3 yards, but he pounds away at you. And I believe that he's a little bit underrated. I know we joke around about him, but every time I watch him, I get the feeling that, hey, I understand why this team trusts Darrell Williams. And I understand why they trust Gus Edwards, because they know exactly what they're getting from him on every play. And I do think that he's set up to take a bulk of the touches again this week.
Any thoughts on that, Dwain? Like, if the big running backs can't play, or it doesn't matter?
I really don't think it matters. I mean, I agree with Drew. I think they're fine with Darrell Williams. I mean, they played Darrell Williams over Le'Veon Bell last week. We've seen on this show, we've talked about it how many times this year, Drake, that Clyde Edwards-Helaire just hasn't been able to take away the long down and distance work or the short down work. He's kind of ebbed and flowed, taking pieces of that here or there, but they've always kept Williams involved, even once they signed Bell. So I agree with Drew. There's something they see about him that, I think you probably said the best word, Drew, is that they trust this guy. They know he's not going to go out there and screw it up. It may not be that flashy, but he's going to do the right thing. He's going to keep the chains moving. But this is really about the passing games, So and that's why I think the trust factor is so huge, right? They want the guy that's not going to give up the sack. They want the guy that's not going to take negative yardage when they do run. They're going to trust him to do the thing that he needs to do. And so, yeah, I don't think it's a big factor, and I think Darrell Williams is fine.
All right, that's good for all this stuff. Let's get into the fun, what ifs of football for 2021. And there's going to be some quarterback musical chairs going on out there. We've already seen now Phillip Rivers retired. There's rumors of Carson Wentz being traded. There's rumors of Deshaun Watson being traded. Maybe Matthew Stafford's on the move. So let me throw out a couple of names here, guys, and I want you to tell me their best fantasy landing spot for 2021. All right? I'll throw it, and we'll go our guest first. So, Drew, we'll go to you first and then to Dwayne. Where do you want to see this guy land in 2021? Deshaun Watson.
Wow. Getting right to it. You know,
my drink's not even a quarter done. We gotta get into this show.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Hit me with it. Yeah. Okay. So I know the Jets rumors have been flying. I don't think that's such a horrible landing spot like a lot of people are saying. I love their offensive coordinator hire, and they have receivers. I know that people kind of joke around about the Jets being so awful, but I like their receivers. I was unfortunately a little Jets heavy on my receivers this year, but gosh, I believe in those guys. Having said that, I really believe the best way for him to have fantasy relevance is in Houston still.
Okay.
And I think that maybe
receivers still.
Yeah, and I think that they'll make a push for Fuller if they have Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Having said, one of the points of analysis that I always use, and I feel like it gets overused, but then when I'm sitting there watching my 5 TVs on a Sunday, it makes a lot of sense. You have a bad defense there. They're not going to suddenly become a good defense, and there's a reason that he led the league in passing yards. And so I think if we're talking about fantasy only, I'd love to see him back in Houston. And there's a little bit of hope that that's going to happen. I think that maybe reading the tea leaves here, it's they're the only one that hasn't filled their coaching spot, I believe. And, Bieniemy's still going. It looks to me more and more like they might go with Bieniemy. I would love to see a Watson-Bieniemy combo with that bad defense for fantasy. For football purposes, man, I'd love to see him on the Niners or the Bears.
Mm. How about you, Dwayne? Where do you think would be the best fantasy landing spot for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think Drew hit some really good ones. I just kind of look at the weapons, too. So like I'm not a Teddy Bridgewater fan, and I do like what's going on in Carolina. I like their weapons. Who knows what happens, right, with Curtis Samuel, but you still got DJ Moore. Let's say they bring Robbie Anderson back. You got Christian McCaffrey. Wow. Like that would be pretty sweet, right, for Deshaun Watson. To be united there. New Orleans is supposedly moving on from Drew Brees, so that could always be interesting. Put him with a guy with a mind like Sean Payton. That would be pretty ridiculous. Denver needs a quarterback. I know Drew Lock has shown some flashes, but they have some young talent. You've got, you'll get Cortland Sutton back. You've got KJ Hamler, who flashed a little bit here and there. You got Jerry Jeudy, who definitely, had some challenges with drops, but he also did some other things really well. You got Noah Fant. Those are some teams that would intrigue me. I think the 49ers could always be in play anytime you can put a guy with someone like Shanahan. Now, to Drew's point, around fantasy, typically like the Shanahan, Kubiak, those type quarterbacks, whenever you're in that scheme, it's very efficient. Right. Ryan Tannehill suffers from some of the same fate. You can have these really big boom games when you need the quarterback to carry the team, but there are these games where the running game can totally carry the team. Now, play action is always going to be there, and that gives you these huge plays, but you may only get 25 attempts several games a year. So from a fantasy perspective, a little less excited. The best thing for quarterbacks that land in like the Shanahan and Kubiak type schemes are the ones that are like, man, they're not really very good, but you put them in a system like that and they can become viable. A guy like Deshaun Watson, while they would probably win a ton of games, I worry it might hold him back like a tad, right, from a fantasy perspective. And then who knows? They could just totally turn him loose. You did have that Matt Ryan year, whatever it was, 5-6 years ago under Shanahan in Atlanta, where Ryan went nuts, right? And I think he was like being drafted in like rounds 13 and 14 and 15 of fantasy drafts that year. And you even have, a good example this year in Green Bay, right? Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a ton of weapons around him. It's really an offense that's based a lot on play action, running the ball. Aaron Rodgers has been really great. Hyper efficient though, right? Efficiency is the name of the game. It's not because you're going to get to throw the ball 50 times. So I'm kind of with Drew. I'd rather see him land in an offense like Houston, where he's going to have to drop back, chunk the ball a lot. They add another weapon. But the other teams that I named, I think would all be there. Another one is potentially, I don't even know Roethlisberger's contract situation, but obviously the Steelers have to do something. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Juju and what goes on with that. But you still have Claypool, you have Deontay Johnson, you got Ebron. So, I mean, that would be, there's so many places right now that need quarterbacks, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's the premier guy. He's better than anybody you could draft. He's the best thing you could do for your franchise if you could get Deshaun Watson. So, it's hard to say that there's a spot where he couldn't be successful.
Now, I think there's a guy who could fit into a lot of holes, and that's Matthew Stafford. And by all accounts, he wants out of Detroit. They just hired Dan Campbell and his ridiculously embarrassing interview that is all over Twitter today.
Gosh, that was awesome.
You can get out from under Matthew Stafford. His dead cap right now on Spot Rack is $19 million. Maybe if you cut him at a certain time, I'm no cap expert. I don't never claim to be, but $19 million is not an insane number. But let's say you can get rid of Matthew Stafford. Let's imagine Matthew Stafford in Pittsburgh. Imagine him in Miami, San Francisco, even Denver with all those weapons thrown it around. I mean, are we
riding Tua off like this soon, like after a half a season?
Yes, done. Off the table. If they're looking to trade him, it looks like they're not sold. I mean, they're pulling him from games. There was rumors.
Well, you have to understand that's also a coach that comes from the Belichick way, right? I mean, Brady didn't get pulled because he was elite, but Belichick will do whatever he has to do to win a game, and that's really the school that you're talking about. In Miami,
another spot for Stafford.
Yeah, the problem with New England, if anybody that goes there, it's almost like, good God, like they have no weapons. They have zero. Like N'Keal Harry's terrible. Julian Edelman's old. You got 2 young tight ends, but they're really late round picks that couldn't even get on the field, right? And Dalton Keene and Asiasi. So it's James White is like their best skill position player right now, and he never gets the ball.
He's already got an apartment in Tampa for next year.
Exactly. So, as far as Stafford, though, I like the one you said, Drake. I like Pittsburgh. And again, it's kind of hard. Like, when we break these down, maybe it's just better to break down the order of how we rate these quarterbacks that are going to be available, because there's a ton of spots available, for these guys. And we probably already kind of covered them all. Yeah, we didn't even mention the Colts.
The Colts, that's where I was going to go.
I got a crazy hot take here, guys. And I've literally drank this much of my beer. And this will never come true, but if it does, I want the victory laps to be never ending. Now, Jacoby Brissett's gone. Phillip Rivers is gone. There was a player that went on a national TV show a few weeks back, and he said, Andrew Luck's not done. Andrew Luck could play again. This is a player that could very well be talking to Andrew Luck. What if Andrew Luck comes out and plays again in Indianapolis? Crazy hot take, I know, Colin Cowherd style, but
I don't think it's that crazy of a hot take. I mean, we talked about it on the show 2 years ago. In dynasty leagues where I own Andrew Luck, I've not dropped him.
Mm-hmm.
I've put him on my taxi squad, now that he's eligible after not playing for 2 seasons. So I don't think Andrew Luck's done. I think Andrew Luck got beat up. I think he got down on himself, but he's just too good of a player, and he's still young. And look how long these quarterbacks play, man. I mean, you got guys that are playing in their mid-40s. How old is Andrew Luck even right now? 32, 33? I haven't even looked.
No, he's not even that old, is he?
No,
maybe not. Like he's in his prime. Like he's got a 10 years left.
Actually, he's 31. Football. He's 31 years old.
Oh, I'm surprised he's even over 30.
Yeah. The guy, time flies, Drew, when we're having fun. Yeah. This guy could play another he could play another 10, 12, 13 years. I don't think Andrew Luck's done either. We'll see. I mean, but we know he can play.
Another guy that I want to talk about, or a situation we should say, is in New Orleans. This team is in cap hell. Drew Brees is gone. Jameis Winston's a free agent. They said, we kind of want to bring Jameis back. Do we really think that they're going to hand over this job to either Jameis? Taysom Hill has a massive cap number next year. You can't get rid of him. He's definitely going to be on the team. So to me, this team is going to go back to that like 1980s, 1990s. Like, remember when Sunday Night Football was on ESPN and it was always like the Saints against the Vikings and it was always these really bad teams and like nobody watched it. And it was like Mike Patrick was calling the game. Like, that's what the Saints to me are going back to. Like, they're just going to stink because if you don't have Drew Brees and you don't have all, you don't have any money, you can't do anything. I don't know. Am I crazy here? Like, where do you see the Saints going at quarterback? It has to be Taysom Hill.
I guess my thing is, like, really, how good was Drew Brees anyway this year? I mean, he what was he, average? Was he slightly below average? He wasn't great, that's for sure. Right? So this is a team that really won on defense. They won on scheme. They really never had Michael Thomas this year. And even once they got Michael Thomas back for those moments, they really became more of a rotational type scheme, more like what Baltimore does with their receivers. You're getting Traquan Smith on the field, Emmanuel Sanders, you're getting Michael Thomas, you're getting guys we've never heard of, right, that are free agents out there playing. So, I mean, from a standpoint of looking at, Breeze and the impact, I think the biggest thing, right, is it impacts Alvin Kamara. I think we've seen that, if they have to go to Taysom Hill. But, I mean, I think the Saints, it definitely limits them. Breeze was winning games, with his head. But I think as far as Taysom Hill goes, I do think that teams will start to figure it out, Drake. Like, he would have to grow. He's going to have to grow as a quarterback. And we can't say that, necessarily that he wouldn't. He really hasn't had that much of a chance to do it, even though he's like 50 years old. I mean, so maybe there's a chance, that he could do some things. I mean, he had a couple pretty good games, at the end of the season. But to your point, it's the cap held that's the real problem, because I think they would really like to do something different. What I do believe is that Jameis Winston is not a fit. He turns the ball over too much. The Saints do not want to turn the ball over. That's kind of their brand, right? We're not just going to beat ourselves. And maybe Jameis Winston could turn a corner, but I think Jameis Winston has just enough accuracy problems and enough panic moments that it's going to be really hard, to change him into a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over on the regular. And I also I think that Sean Payton's going to have to redesign his offense if for some reason Jameis Winston is really going to be the quarterback. A lot of that short timing, high percentage, really, accuracy throws, right, in between linebackers and zones and all that kind of stuff. I don't trust Jameis Winston on a lot of those kind of throws. So they're going to have to change the offense if for some reason they stick with Jameis.
I found that if you mention Taysom Hill on Twitter in any negative light, weirdo, like Mormon, I don't know, Taysom Hill truthers will come out of the woodwork and attack you because it happened to me. And I like Taysom Hill. I started him in home leagues. Like, I played him everywhere. And people come out of the woodwork actually like, don't you say anything bad about Taysom Hill. Blah, blah, blah. He's a great man. I'm like, buddy, you're on Twitter. You got to realize what we're doing here, okay? But, yeah, word to the wise. Don't talk smack about Taysom Hill on Twitter. Yikes. Let me go to Drew. I want to talk to you a little bit because you are the auction guy. Was there anything that happened in auctions this year? Players that went for maybe a great value, who were just these super league winners, and maybe just kind of, I don't know, we can talk auction strategy because we never do on this show. Like, maybe, does anybody want to try an auction for 2021? Their league is kind of bored. They're like, yeah, we want to do something different. Like, pitch auctions to folks.
Man, I could take the rest of the hour on that, but let me just say this. I have the utmost respect for the people that love the snake format, and there's plenty of guys in the industry that's all they talk about, and I get that because that's the majority of the way people draft. So let me preface it by that. But I feel like snake drafting is like checkers and auction drafting is like chess. There are so many more things that can happen in an auction that make it more fun and make it more of a test of knowledge and thinking on your feet. And I think that part of where that comes from is I'm an avid poker player, so that kind of plays into it. But I believe that when you're in that room and you don't have 20 minutes to make your decision before your next pick, it really separates the people who have done the preparation. Because I always say this, let's say that you're bidding on a guy that's ranked, say, running back 18. And the bidding's slowing down and you're trying to figure out, do I bid or not, because it seems like a good price. Well, you've already had running back 7 and running back 12 go off the board, so you know what they cost. And you've had running back 24 go off the board, you know what they cost. You're bidding on number 18, and you have to know whether or not you like 18 better than you like running back 17 and 16. You also have to understand whether or not the price that they're going for compares to the guys that have already gone and how that compares. So you're assimilating all this information all at once in a really heated moment in the middle of a draft where bidding or not bidding can really make or break your season in some ways. So the way I sell it to people is this: if you feel confident in your knowledge and your preparation, absolutely auctions are the way to get an advantage. If you feel like you're doing more work or you're a little bit ahead of the rest of your league, I think that it kind of forces you to sort of walk through water when you're in a snake draft.
How many auction leagues you do, Dwayne? Any?
I've done them. I didn't do any this past year. And for me, it's just, I agree with Drew, actually. I like the strategy behind an auction draft. I'm also a huge poker player, so maybe that's where it comes from. I do think there's definite edges to be gained. As far as, the way I approach, snake drafts, a lot of where I put my money in fantasy is just really based on, what contests are available to me, right? Mm-hmm. Where do I think I can win the most money? Who has the biggest prize pools? Because a lot of my fantasy teams are really in these national pools, right? Where you're trying to win your league and then you get into a points race after that. And I wish there were more things like that for auctions, right? I wish we could get enough people in the industry to where we could have something, and maybe there's something like that, Drew, that you can tell me about that I haven't, seen. So a lot of my energy ends up going towards snake, but it's only for the reason that Drew said. It's what most people play, and then that's how those contests play out. But I totally agree with everything he said. I love the strategy, of the auction. I love the idea of having to act on the fly. I agree with him. The more prepared you are, the more you differentiate from your competition versus giving them 20 minutes to kind of recollect themselves after they just totally screwed up the last pick, So I think everything that you said is 100% true. Now I do think there's a lot of strategy to snake drafts, and there's definitely a way to play chess versus checkers in your snake drafts as well. But like the margins for it are so much, there's less, right, in the margins. Like the way you create the margins is you draft 20 teams, right? And so that you can basically kind of diversify, or you end up in some drafts where you're in there with, just like at a poker table, you sit down, you're like, wow, this is going to be a great night. Like there's only 2 other good players at the table. You got 5 other players that aren't good. It's basically going to be figuring out who's going to take these people's money and how do I just not mix up in the wrong hands. Versus sometimes you end up in a snake draft where you're looking around the table and it's like I look and I see Drew and I see a Sigmund Bloom and I see, an Evan Silva, I see a Chad Schrader, you see all these people that you're like, wow, every one of these people is as good or better than I am. It's really just going to come down to, the way that this draft plays out, which is already kind of predetermined, right? For the lack of a better word.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's Drake in this draft? How can we pick on this nerd?
No, well, Drake, no, we already assumed that you won the league, right? So, true. I mean, I
saw this funny article today on, I don't know what it was on, but it was like funny high school yearbook quotes, and they would show you like just random high school pages and the quotes that were under them. And the best quote was like, there's this one nerdy kid. And his quote was, "Hey, that guy stole my girlfriend," and it was attributed to everyone. That's the same thing. Who stole my money? Yeah, everyone says that. So, did you do anything this year in the Kings Classic auction draft, Drew? How'd you do?
How did I do in the Kings Classic auction? In the draft itself, or
either one? How'd you just finish the season?
I won the auction. I thought
did you?
Are you setting me up? Yeah.
Hey, that's my job here.
I took it down, man. I took it down. Yeah, I was up against Jake Seeley in the finals. We were 1-2 in points in the regular season. He was first, I was second, and we both had a crap game in the finals. But that's not that interesting. What I did in that league was odd because on bigger leagues, my general rule of thumb This is just general, but the bigger the league gets, the more I play for a balanced roster in my auctions.
It's 14 team.
Yeah. So 14, I was really trying to just have starters all the way through. But one of the things I talked about on Twitter, I did a long thread because felt kind of disappointed in myself after the draft. Bad take. But I felt like the depth at which we went to have 10 starters that were all position starters, no kicker, no defense, and then to have 14 teams, boy, did it stretch those last couple starting spots. Like I was rolling with Keelan Cole the entire year. That tells you what it's like. But what I did when I went into the draft was I really tried to go deep at wide receiver because I felt like the prices were going to fall off. They never ended up actually falling off. But I got prices that I felt were reasonable early in the draft. And then later on, it was odd because I thought, okay, well, here comes the cliff. The cliff is coming. It never happened because there was just too much money in the room with a 14-teamer. So that's a little word of warning there that I think that the tendency sometimes in beginners when they're doing auctions is they think that when there's extra money in the room, say they're going from a 10-teamer to a 12 or to a 14 or whatever, they think the money's going to sort of filter down to all the players. That doesn't happen. It goes towards the top. And so I thought there was a cliff coming, and the cliff came way later than I thought. So there was just the prices were so much higher on role players I didn't expect to be there. And then the cliff came at the end when I should have been picking up guys like, McKissick and Hines and those kind of guys. And I was turning up my nose at them because I wasn't, I said it on the Twitter feed after I won the league, but I don't think I was prepared for how tough that draft was going to be. I ended up with studs at every position, and I think that ended up in a 14-teamer that ended up just being the difference. I had Watson, Zeke, Tyreek.
I'm looking at your team here. Yeah, you had Zeke, and you overcame it.
Yeah, Zeke, boy, oh boy. He was on pace. I was fond of saying before the season that we just haven't seen that monster touchdown total from Zeke yet. And I said, boy, 20 touchdowns is not out of the realm for this guy in this offense. And he was on pace to have 19, I think, when Dak went down. But yeah, I overcame the Zeke thing, and I pulled a huge bonehead move in the championship by starting Pollard over Zeke. Because we all watched Zeke laboring around the field the last 3 or 4 weeks before he sat that 1 week. And I did not realize how big of an effect the injury was having on him. Because when he came back and played week 16, he looked like a different guy. He looked like the guy we knew. And he had his burst back and, finishing runs and that kind of thing. And within the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, I knew I made a mistake. I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. It cost me 15 points. And I still ended up winning, but holy cow, I would never live that down if that had been the reason I lost.
We have to get Dwain to the Kings Classic next year. For those of you who don't know, our friend Bob Lung, the Mr. Consistency, puts on this draft at the Hall of Fame. It's the coolest draft you could ever be a part of. God knows how Drew and I got invited to this thing, but we're there and we're never giving our spots up.
Heck yeah.
We're in this draft. You're sitting in the Hall of Fame. There's busts all around you. SiriusXM is broadcasting it live from the spot. It's every guy you've ever heard of from the industry. There's now 3 divisions of it. So think of a big name guy in the industry. They're there. Okay. And the coolest part is going out and having beers the night before and the night after. And that's kind of how Drew and I struck up a little friendship here. But just imagine you're sitting at a Buffalo Wild Wings in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, with, Brad Evans, with Bob Harris, Jeff Radcliffe. There's a million fun guys at this thing. It was just, what a cool event. And I talked to Bob, and they said they are planning it for this year. And trust me, if they do it, we will do a freaking show live from the Kings Classic. And we're going to get Dwain's ass up from Texas to go to Ohio. It's funny. Most people don't know this. Drew is one of, I want to say, 3 people that we've ever had on the Hustle that I've met in person. The others being Mike Clay and Joe Dolan. I've actually never met Dwain in person. We've done this show for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
I live in New York. Dwain lives in Texas.
Middle of August, baby. Come on.
Yeah, man. We're going to get you there, Dwain.
It's so much fun. I tell you what, you nailed it. I went, and I believe that the year I went was the second year they had it.
Yes.
So
2019.
I was playing a little catch up, meeting people, but everybody's just so cool and laid back and fun, and meeting all those guys. You understand that making it in this business isn't about, just, of course, some of it's positioning and who you know. I get that. But these guys work hard, man. They work hard and they love what they do. And it was really cool to just talk to them and pick their brains and just see what they're all about, because there's some extraordinary guys, but they're also very ordinary guys too. Mm-hmm. You put them on this pedestal, like, look at what they've accomplished, but they just work their butts off. So it's
every single person there asked me, they go, "Oh, you're the guy that does the show with Dwain." And I go, yeah. They're like, "Where's he?" I'm like, he's not here. Like, all right, enough of you.
Why didn't you send the A team?
Like, what do you got? Is he on a headset somewhere? Oh man.
You are the A team, Drake. We all know this.
Yes.
Let's talk about some second-year wide receivers here. And this is actually a question, Drew, that you came up with and you want to talk about. You said outside of Lamb, outside of Jefferson, what 2020 rookie, are you looking for in 2021 redraft? But I would even throw Lamb and Jefferson in there, because I want to talk about, where do you think those guys are going to go in redraft? Is Jefferson going to be a second-round pick next year?
Yep, absolutely. Wow. I mean, well, look how well he did this year. We know how people hype for young players, especially if they've proven it. I don't see how Jefferson's not. I could see maybe he's a third-round pick, but I bet he ends up as a second-round pick. I put something out about Cam Akers on Twitter last week. Every down back, if you can get him in the third or fourth round next year, he's going to be an absolute steal. And I had all these people come back, "Oh, no way, Cam Akers is going to be a lock for the second round." I'm like, have you looked at all the players that are available? I mean, have you thought about Justin Jefferson? Like, have you thought about, even if you just start listing all the running backs, right? Whereas a guy like Cam, we can talk about Cam Akers in a minute, but as far as the receivers go, yeah, man. I mean, I'm excited about a lot of the rookies. I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's gonna be expensive. My guess is he'll be ranked by most fantasy experts. He'll be top 12, top 18. I don't see how he falls outside of that. For the most part. So I think that's going to put him as a late second round pick, about probably where Chris Godwin was this year. He might slip around, that turn in the third. And if we're talking like a 12-person snake draft, Drew could tell us more about what percentage of our auction we would have to allocate to Justin Jefferson. Mm-hmm. But to Drew's question, like the guys that I'm most excited about, I think the guy for me the most that won't get the love like that, Jefferson will, but I think he could have a very similar season. It's T. Higgins. You get Joe Burrow back, and see, that's the things you got to look for in fantasy, right? T. Higgins was having really a great rookie season. Yep. You lose Joe Burrow, you tail off at the end of the year. You play for a crappy team like the Bengals. Had a lot of things go wrong. Right. And so now you're going to be coming next year, and he's probably going to be ranked in the 30s, something like that, would be my guess. Maybe like the low 40s. I mean, I think T. Higgins is a guy that, he can win deep on speed. He can win deep on 50-50 balls. He can win underneath and take a ball the distance. He's a factor in the red zone. He's a factor on end zone passes. So really he checks all the boxes. Plus you have him paired up with a young quarterback where they've come in together. So for me, T. Higgins is the guy where I'll probably own him more, right? I'll be overweight versus the field on T. Higgins for where he will most likely go in drafts. I'll probably be the same way on Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy did all the things that I thought he would do, and he struggled with the things that we knew he was going to struggle with. So he'll have to improve on drops and things like that. Now with Jeudy, I would prefer a better quarterback, right? The thing you get with T. Higgins is Burrow showed enough, and we know, Burrow will be having to recover, but most likely by the first month of the season, we'll have Joe Burrow back for T. Higgins. And you're still going to have the same offensive coordinator intact. You're still going to have a defense that's going to struggle. They're going to have to, all the things that Drew talked about earlier for Houston, right? they have to be in these shootouts. They got to score a lot of points to win. You're going to have the same thing going for T. Higgins. So I think T. Higgins for me is the guy that, is going to be drafted as a wide receiver 3, maybe even a wide receiver 4 in some cases, most likely a wide receiver 3 that could very easily end up as a high-end wide receiver 2, maybe even challenge for wide receiver 1 status.
Drew, I just pulled up from a website. Here's a bunch of guys. I'm not going to name the website, but these guys did a 3-round mock. And let me talk to some of the guys here in the 3rd round. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to touch any of these guys. Joe Mixon, I don't want Joe Mixon in the 3rd round.
At this point, in the 3rd.
I'll take Joe Mixon in the 3rd easy. That's like where he should go. The problem is this year he's a 1st rounder, right? Yeah. You give me a guy that's going to get pretty much all the carries. He's just not going to get the long down and distance work, right? He's Josh Jacobs. He's the guy. He's the guy you're going to get the discount on next year. So I would take Joe Mixon in a heartbeat in the 3rd. How
about David Montgomery? Drew, you touching him in the 3rd round?
Man, I'll tell you what. Yeah, in the 3rd, but I'm not excited. The way he finished the year was a product of who he played. And I understand that that's all part of the game, but golly, he feasted on some real bad defenses, period, but also run defenses. And that big finish, he's always been a plotter, and that's what he was through the first half of the year. And then he came upon these sort of fire matchups and did better. Yeah, 3rd round's fine, but I'm not excited about it.
The last 2 picks, Dwayne, in this 3rd round are Deontay Johnson, who probably won't have Juju to deal with, Deontay Johnson, and then Cam Akers.
Yeah, that's about where I see Cam Akers going to start the draft season next year. By the time we hit late August, early September, assuming the Rams don't draft, another running back, my guesses will be that, Cam Akers will be the guy that'll be up he'll move up like James Conner did this year. You'll have to take him at the end of the 2nd if you want him, or at the very beginning of the 3rd. And I even see a scenario where it could get really crazy, right? Where Cam Akers pushes up maybe to the mid-2nd. I think there's enough young talent like the Justin Jeffersons and guys like that have proven themselves a little more than Cam Akers that I don't see him jumping into the 1st round. Like I saw some people on Twitter saying was going to happen. I know he carried the workload and looked good, right? Down the stretch. So I'm not saying that it would never happen, but I just think there's too many other young players because you still got to talk about Antonio Gibson. Jonathan Taylor's probably going to be a 1st round pick. Next year you still got Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are going to be, in that mix, but I'll tell you right now, like for me, I probably and it's not that I like Akers, the player, necessarily better, even though I thought he looked really good. It's that I know that McVay, even though he rotated guys this year, when he finally did settle on Akers, he did go with him. And we know he did that with Todd Gurley before. And he talked about it even the preseason. He's like, look, we're going to go with a hot hand, but my preference is one guy carry the load, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think Akers has earned the right to do that. We'll see what happens, right, in the draft. But my hope is that this Darrell Henderson, kind of talk track happens again, right, next preseason, and people get scared, and that pushes Akers down into the late, keeps Akers as a late 3rd, mid 4th sometimes. That's where I'll feel great about taking him. But I would be willing to take Akers, as high as the end of the 2nd round. Now that I've seen they're willing to give him the full workload. I mean, I think I'd rather own him than Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon. Heck, you could even argue Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, though, is going to, depending on who they get at quarterback, he's got a great offensive line, has a chance to be in a really good offense. Not that Akers doesn't. The Rams are a good offense as well. The thing with Taylor is you just know Nyheim Hines is not going away. He's always going to have his role. And so Jonathan Taylor, what you need is basically what you're hoping is that he's the Derrick Henry. Right. Mm-hmm. He's the guy that no matter what, they give him 25 carries every game, even though he's not going to get a lot in the passing game. That's what you need from Jonathan Taylor. Whereas these other guys, that are in a role like Derrick Henry is, it's all game script dependent. They have coaches that'll totally veer away from it. So, that's I'm excited to see where Akers, ends up.
Brian, let me comment.
Sure.
On Jefferson. So I'm in an analyst we're mocking once a month from now and through August to track the changes, ADP changes. And Jefferson,
you big timer.
Oh yes, I'm huge, man. I'm huge. Jefferson went at the 1-2 turn. Now,
Yep.
I mean, when I saw it, I was like, whoa. But then I thought, well, if you're that guy, you're not getting him at the end of the third. Mm-hmm. So if you want him, that's where you got to take him. I think that's crazy. But at the same time, what the kid did as a rookie, that's where he's going to be come August. You're going to have to get him at the beginning of the second or he ain't going to be there.
In this mock, again, this site did 3 rounds. CEH was not even drafted in the first 3 rounds. That guy went in the first round in 2020.
So he'll be a value next year. Like
absolutely,
he'll be the guy that you can take a shot on in the 4th or 5th round. Like there's always opportunity costs involved. Dude, this next year is going to be a great year for fantasy football. We have a lot of really good players because of how many young players broke out this year, and we're going to get another good crop of rookies. Like this is going to be one of the richest seasons upcoming, in my opinion, assuming injuries and things don't just wreak complete havoc. It's going to be a really, really deep fantasy football season in 2021.
And if you want to get excited for the draft, nobody does the draft plan like the Hustle. Make sure on YouTube that you're hitting that subscribe button, you're commenting, liking the show. And when that draft plan show goes live, man, trust me, that's the biggest thing we do all year. You're going to want to be a part of it. I'm sure we'll have lots of information about all Dwain's tiers and all the other fun stuff. But hit that subscribe button. Help us out. If you're listening on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. And if you want to support the show even more, boy, do we got something fun for you. And Drew, this thing is so sick. If you go over on Twitter and you go to @FFHustle, that's the show's Twitter page, our pinned tweet is to our apparel store. What we've done is created a shirt specifically dedicated to our man, Dwain McFarland. And you can get the Analytical Assassin t-shirt right now. If you go over, it's at our store at FF Hustle. It's the pinned tweet. Go to our store. And it's it's a black shirt with the kind of the tombstone silhouette. If you know the movie, the 4 guys walking, and then underneath it in a kind of Western font, it says Analytical Assassin. And right between your shoulder blades is the Hustle logo on the back. It's so sick. It will be the envy of all your nerdy fantasy football friends. If you're into analytics, trust me, our good folks at Viridian Global who help us with the store. There's also winter hats, baseball caps, t-shirts, hoodies. I bought a hoodie for my freezing basement, so maybe next week when we do the show, I'll have the hoodie on, but just check it out. The easiest way to find it on Twitter, at FF Hustle. It's the pinned tweet. So I was mentioned there, CEH is not on this mock draft. So if we're looking towards next year, guys, Drew, let me throw a couple of running backs at you, and you're the auction guy. How do you prioritize them in an auction? So I'll put CEH as one of the guys. J.K. Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson, James Robinson. I know it's a lot of guys, but
Drake, why don't you add 5 more?
Yeah.
Drew, are you writing this down?
Yeah, let me I'll break it down this way. For the first 3 guys drafted in the second round, James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Miles Sanders. How do you prioritize those guys? James Robinson went first, then Gibson, then Sanders mid-second.
Wow. Well, Robinson is one of those guys that people love to hate for some reason. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean about hate, but like they love to come up with They love to come up with excuses as to why he did what he did this year and he's not going to do it again. And I don't see that happen. And I personally, the move that makes me want to cry at night is I traded away Robinson in a keeper league in order to get Zeke because I was making a push for the title. And boy, was that a mistake. But I like Robinson first. Gibson worries me, and it doesn't have anything to do with his college usage or anything that we were talking about preseason. But he developed the injury at the end of the year. We don't know if he can carry the load. We also know how much they like McKissick. I don't know that that's going to change a ton, and I still have faith that Gibson's going to be all right, but that's not a guy that I'm super excited about in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would definitely go Robinson first. And then the third one you said was
Miles Sanders, who just
Sanders.
got a new coach today,
Yeah.
Nick Sirianni, who is the OC from the Colts.
Yeah, I'd go Robinson, Sanders, Gibson personally. But Sanders also, it makes me just a little nervous only because we don't know what's happening there yet. That's an odd situation. But I do love the hire, and I think that it makes me a little more comfortable with Sanders for that hire. But, I'm sure you guys are familiar with a lot of the film work out there on Twitter. Sanders is one of those guys that he just made me nervous from the beginning because the guys that I respected that watch film had always said that
they don't like him.
Yeah, that he runs away from colors, and he's a very he's just not polished. He's gotten better. So I'm paying attention to what those guys are saying because I'm not a high level film guy, but I'm paying attention to what those guys are saying. I'm okay with Sanders, but right now I'm nervous as we sit here in January. I may feel better when they get the situation settled down there. We know what's going to happen with Wentz and what moves they make, but it makes me nervous right now. Robinson's the only guy of those three that I feel real good about right now.
Dwayne, the next two guys that came off the board were Aaron Jones and J.K. Dobbins. I'm just giving you the running backs here. We don't necessarily know where Jones is going to be in 2021, but boy, oh boy, I like J.K. Dobbins. I think that's a steal at the end of the second round.
Yeah, I'm not going to take J.K. Dobbins at the end of the second round. And the reason why is because who we started off the show, Drew, whenever we were talking about Darrell Williams, it's Gus Edwards. They just continue to split that, and you have a quarterback that's going to take away rushing touchdowns, rushing attempts. I like J.K. Dobbins a lot, but that's a perfect example of the player that's really talented, but you're almost betting, you're not leaving yourself a lot of margin, for J.K. Dobbins if you're going to take him at the end of the second round. Yes, if all of a sudden they gave him everything, could he then be worth, a late first? He still has to deal with Lamar Jackson, right? Mm-hmm. Rushing the ball as well. And you're in an offense that doesn't throw the ball a ton. Yeah, he can catch some balls, but it's a different kind, of offense. Really, Lamar Jackson is the star component of the offense. So for me, J.K. Dobbins, I won't be taking him unless I can get him in like the fourth round, right? Unless just some news breaks where all of a sudden we know for sure he's going to be the feature back, right? Gus Edwards is just going to be, spell him every third or fourth series, that kind of thing. Then I would be excited about J.K. Dobbins. I mean, 'cause here's my thought on it. Like, yes, they just released Mark Ingram, but Mark Ingram hasn't been active for like 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah,
and it hasn't mattered, right? And believe me, I'm the guy that wants this. I love J.K. Dobbins as a talent. I just think this is a team that has shown us as a philosophy, they rotate players besides their quarterback. They rotate their receivers. They rotate their tight ends. On offense, the only thing they don't rotate are their offensive linemen and their quarterback, right? Everything, all the skill positions rotate, and they do it on defense as well, with a lot of different positions. So there's something to their philosophy about trying to keep players fresh. And then they're just not going to overload them. So for me with Dobbins, I think that's just too high. And a lot of it for me comes down to opportunity costs. That means I've got to pass on other players, especially a receiver, that I'm going to feel way better about than I'm going to feel about, J.K. Dobbins, at the end of the second round.
Yeah. Can I just put in a plug here for auctions?
Please.
This is why auctions are great.
Yeah.
Because I don't want So one of the things that I've been rolling with for the past few years, and it's really served me well, is just taking one good running back and just completely punting on the second running back and just loading up on wide receivers. That you can go for a Dobbins type. And what I don't like about snakes is I feel shoehorned into, okay, well, it's the middle of the third. If I don't take Dobbins here, when it gets back to me in the middle of the fourth, I'm screwed. I don't have a guy that I like. Mm-hmm. And in auctions, it allows you to just kind of hang back and wait because one of these guys that's a viable running back 1 or borderline, running back 2, however you want to couch it. But one of these guys is going to be a palatable price that's going to fit your philosophy of how you're building your auction squad. So I don't want to be there in the third round staring at Dobbins like, I got to take this guy. And I feel handcuffed in snakes like that. And in auctions, I feel like, okay, if Dobbins, the price is right, great, sign me up. If not, cool, I can forget about him because of all the problems that Dwain said, and those are the same problems I have. They're going to keep using Gus, and they like him in the red zone. I know Dobbins has rushing touchdowns, and he's gotten his opportunities near the goal line, but they like Edwards for his stick it up in there, kind of style.
You talk about impressive young receivers, and Caleb Hooper asked us on YouTube, what do you guys think of Ayuk's production next year? Now, Brandon Ayuk's a guy that comes in, he had nearly 100 targets, caught 60 balls for 748 and 5 touchdowns, and that's after not really doing anything for the first 6 weeks of the season. I am of the mind that Brandon Ayuk is the number one receiver in that offense next year and takes over for Deebo Samuel, because I just think he's a better player. I'd love to see what you guys think about Ayuk.
Go ahead, Drew. You started off.
Yeah. Well, I have a similar concern with the offense in general that your question raises, is who becomes that number one. They use Deebo in such a way that they manufacture touches for him, and that's great. But so far, we haven't been able to count on him being there. So if there's a guy I want, it's definitely Ayuk over Deebo next year. But having said that, it worries me. I don't love the opportunities that are going to be there to support those two guys and Kittle. That's not how they want to play. They don't want to throw the ball 600 times. And if Deebo is healthy and he's there, I worry a lot about Ayuk.
Yep, I agree. And I actually think Deebo is the better player. He just can't stay healthy. But Deebo's just his run after the catch, his ruggedness. Ayuk has the speed, right? He has the athleticism, but Deebo just has that. That the reason he's called Deebo. He's just a bully, when you give him the ball. In those two games where, the Rams really had nobody torch them all season except for Deebo Samuel. And if you look at his ADOT in both of those games, one of them was negative and one of them was like barely above the line of scrimmage. And he was just ripping off these huge plays against one of the best defenses in the league because of a very unique skill set, that he has. But I think Drew hit the nail on the head, Drake. For me, it's an offense that, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, right? When I talked about, what if Deshaun Watson landed with the 49ers? The problem with that offense is they can get into game scripts where all you got to do is throw it 25 times. Well, if all you got to do is throw it 25 times and Kittle's going to be the one, right?
Sure.
Pretty much every week, right? And then you're going to be wondering, is it going to be Samuel? I don't think either one of these two guys clearly takes over the two. I think it's going to be more of a give and take, or you're basically waiting on the week where one or the other's hurt. You're like, oh, well, then I get to start my guy this week and I can feel good about it. I think it's just going to be a volatile situation. Very, very good players, great scheme as far as creating chunk plays, all those things, but you're really dependent on the big plays. And I think you're still where they're going to go in drafts. They'll probably go. My guess is they're going to be wide receiver 3s. There's probably going to be some other guys you're looking at. That's probably about where they should go. But the way we play it on the hustle, right? We're playing percentages. We're probably going to have some other guys like Brandon Cooks, some guys like that we're probably T. Higgins even that we're going to like slightly more than those two guys because of the volume we think that they're going to have in their offense.
Love Higgins. Love him.
I got a receiver I love, and fantasy loves him, but it just seems the teams that he's been on and there's quarterbacks don't, and that's Allen Robinson. He is going to be somewhere else in 2021. He cannot come back to the disaster that is the Bears offense. Where would you love to see Allen Robinson wind up in 2021, Drew?
I have some dream destinations and then some realistic ones. I think
we're all friends here. Go nuts. Take your pants off. It's fine.
Hold on a second. We've reached that time. Drake, you're the Eagles expert, but boy, would that be fun to put him in Philly with old Carson Wentz.
Yeah, they don't have any money.
I know they don't. I know. So that's a dream destination. But the Colts is one that I keep coming back to. And hey, let's put Luck and Robinson together, right?
Hey.
But yeah, no, I would love to see him go to the Colts. They have boy, it was really surprising to me that Pittman tailed off like he did. And I don't know if that was Rivers' limitations. I remember watching distinctly a 9-target game for Pittman where he caught 2 balls, and Rivers was atrocious. So that maybe that's part of it. But I don't know that Hilton, Pittman, I think Robinson would fit great there. 2 other teams that I'll just throw out there, and Dwayne, you can have at it. But the Raiders and the Ravens. I know the Ravens aren't exciting for fantasy, so I don't really want to see Robinson there for fantasy. But to have a big body contested catch guy in Baltimore, boy, that seems appealing football wise. But I go Raiders, Ravens, Colts.
Yeah, I mean the team that I think of is the Packers. I mean, if you had Devontae Adams and an Allen Robinson, together in this kind of offense, they can both block in the running game. They can both really attack all. They're not like superb deep threats, but off play action, and with the different things they can do in that scheme, I think that could be really interesting. I like the places you named, as well, Drew. I think the one other one, that I would look at would really be what if you could do something like that in Kansas City? I mean, look, I like McCole Hardman, but he's really more of a cuff to Tyreek Hill. Imagine, they tried to do this with Sammy Watkins, right? They wanted a guy that could work more of the underneath crossers, things like that, be more of a rugged run after the catch kind of guy. Allen Robinson can do all of that. I doubt the Chiefs go spin that because they don't have to, right? Their offense is already elite. They don't have to go do that. The Packers, on the other hand, are an offense that I look at and think, they could easily regress next year. They've played really well. They have a great quarterback, but they've pretty much stretched the boundaries, I think, of how great that offense can be. I don't see it getting better. It's going to be tough for Devontae Adams to score, 17 receiving touchdowns or whatever the ridiculous number is that he had, or for Aaron Rodgers to throw a touchdown like basically, 10% of the time he drops back to throw the ball. That's going to be tough with the weapons they have. So I think the Packers, would be the one. Obviously, the Ravens would also be, a potentially good fit. My problem with the Ravens is they just rotate guys so much. Like, are they really willing to commit to someone? And if so, then pay the money. But if not, then let's just keep, Allen Robinson away from that situation.
All right, this is what I want to leave you guys with here. We've got Drew Davenport from Football Guys. You can follow him on Twitter at DrewFBG Auctions plural. And the good guys over at footballguys.com. We know Sigmund Bloom and the fellas. Dwayne spent some time there, and they're always very nice to us. All right, I got to get into this because I fought with everybody on Twitter about it. Phillip Rivers retired, and the instant debate comes up. Is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer? And I say no. I say he is a compiler. He's played 17 years, 15 of which he's been a starter. Now, let me give you some of the background. He is 5th all-time in completed passes, 12th all-time in passer rating, 5th all-time in touchdown passes, 5th all-time in passing yards. He has 12 4,000-yard seasons. I want you to think back now in your football minds to the biggest Phillip Rivers win you've ever seen, that big Phil Rivers moment. Now I want you to realize that you can't think of one because there isn't one. He's played for shit teams for 15 years. He's won a couple of playoff games. He's never been to a Super Bowl. He's been to one AFC championship game. He's just a guy that's been on okay teams that put up a bunch of numbers because they had to throw because they sucked. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's probably going to get in, because they love guys like that who are fun and aw shucks and the media likes them. And, a guy like Donovan McNabb who went to 5 NFC title games and a Super Bowl will not. But that's not me being an Eagles homer. It's just looking at it and saying McNabb did way more in a shorter time than Rivers. But Rivers is automatically this Hall of Fame player. It doesn't make any sense. He's just a compiler. Anybody could have done what he did in that time.
Well, let me make the devil's advocate argument. I understand the compiler argument. It's completely legit. The Phillip Rivers moment I think about is the ACL game where he came back after a week and played basically with no ACL. That to me was incredible. I also believe that it was tough for Phillip Rivers to play in the AFC in the era that he did. And that shouldn't knock him because he wasn't one of the best in the AFC. He had to deal with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Ben. And, that I still think that
he's not even the top 5 in his conference. He's making the Hall of Fame.
I know.
He's not the whole NFL. His conference, he's not in the top 5.
Yeah, but he was playing with some all-time greats. I mean, we're talking about some big names there. I totally get you. Here's my thing with Rivers. I think that part of what we lose when we have the compiler conversation is that it does take something special to play in the league as long as he did and stay healthy and be available and be, whatever, top third in the league the entire time he was there. I understand that's not a super strong argument to say, hey, he's top third in the league, let's put him in the Hall of Fame. I get that. I'm not going out on a limb and saying, boy, I have to have this dude in the Hall of Fame. But I agree with the comments that he's Hall of Fame worthy. I do.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally get what you're saying too, Drake. I think Drew hit on a lot of good points. He played, it was played in a tough conference. You're dealing with the Patriots every single year. But I mean, he had a lot of winning seasons. It's not like he was just compiling on complete losing teams. He had a lot of teams that did win, that did make the playoffs. Did he ever make a big splash in the playoffs? No. Man, there's so many quarterbacks that don't. I mean, we all love Aaron Rodgers. How many Super Bowls does Aaron Rodgers have? He has one.
Right? Phil Rivers has made, I think I looked it up the other day. He's made the playoffs like less than half of his seasons. He doesn't even have that many wins. It's like,
but go look. You're comparing him to Brady, man. Like I'm telling you, people
that's the best of the best,
right? But guess what? Go look at all the other quarterbacks that have ever played and tell me how many of them made it to the playoffs in half their seasons. It's a very limited number. It's not easy, right? I mean, go look at Dan Marino. I bet he wasn't in the playoffs half of his seasons. So I mean, I get what you're saying. I know. They play in a different era, but I mean, when he was at his prime, I mean, he had some great years and he's still, I mean, having 4,000 yard, seasons at the age that he was at, over the last several years. I know we all make fun of his arm and all those things, but I don't think you can totally put whether or not you won a Super Bowl just on the quarterback. We know it's the most important thing, but his circumstances were very different, right? And some of the other guys that were around him. I also don't think of Phillip Rivers as being this guy that just choked all the time. I mean, I don't think of him. Yes, did he win all these big games? No. But did he just choke in these big moments and lose games? I don't think of it that way either, right? Yeah, he had some moments, but I'm like Drew. I remember the good moments too. I remember the game when he basically played on no ACL. So I think he deserves to be in there. It's really rare to play as many years as he did, and even if it is just compiling, to put up the numbers that he did.
Can I say they refused to give him an offensive line for a long time too?
Yeah. Yeah, for a very long time. And early on, he was playing Marty ball, right? I mean, so it's, anyway, yeah, I do get what you're saying, Drake, but I just think, sometimes circumstances happen, man. I don't know that I lay 0 Super Bowl wins really fully at the feet of Phil Rivers. I would say that there's more to do with the circumstances that he played in. I think he's a good enough quarterback, or he was, 4 or 5 years ago when he was still at the end of his prime. And then before that, he was a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl.
All right, let me get some NFC and AFC championship game predictions before we get out of here. All right, we'll go to our guest first. Drew, who do you think is going to play in the Super Bowl?
Well, we're assuming Mahomes is playing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brain injuries mean nothing on this show. He's in.
Well, it certainly seems like he's on track to play. I got to say, I don't see – boy, was I impressed with Rodgers against the Rams. I run these piddly little playoff fantasy games with some buddies of mine, and I just stayed away from Rodgers last weekend because I just wasn't sure that he could get it done against such a good defense the way he had been. And gosh, he shut me up. Man, he looked good. I don't see the Bucs defense giving him a lot of trouble. I'm going Packers, and I think that the Bills have a really good chance to beat the Chiefs. But what I saw from Mahomes and company in the first half against Cleveland. They were doing whatever they wanted to do. There was concern that they were going to be a little rusty coming off a 2, almost 3-week absence. They looked great. And if that's any indication, I think they're going to carve it up too. And I'm going chalk Packers Chiefs.
Mr. McFarland.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is we've got 4 quarterbacks all playing really well. So no matter what happens, we're going to get a good Super Bowl. Normally at this point, like there's this one odd wheel team. You're like, oh man, don't let them in,
Right.
because then it's going to screw the Super Bowl up. I'm going to be happy with whatever we get. If we were to get, the Bills, Tampa, the Bills, Packers, the Chiefs, Packers, Chiefs, Tampa, I'm happy with all of the matchups. I'm going with the Chiefs versus the Bucs.
And I think that Tom Brady is just too good looking, too smart. Yeah, I threw that in there. Now, I'm a Brady fan. I want to see Brady in the Super Bowl. I think Tampa Bay wins that game. And we're going to be breaking tables and lighting old ladies on fire up here and drinking Labatt Blue because the Bills are going to the Super Bowl to play against the Tom Brady Tampa Bay Bucs. It's going to be madness up here.
Brian, when you brought me on here and said it was going to be exciting tonight, I thought you were going to jump on a table, but whatever, man. If you want to,
they're selling at the Dick's Sporting Goods, which I don't know if it's nationwide, but if the big sporting good chain up here, if you go in the department that sells Bill's swag, like all the Zubas and 1980s looking sweatshirts, they have folding tables there that you can buy because you want to Dudley Boys style, get 3D through a table. And that's what Bills fans do, man. I mean, we've all seen that highlight on Twitter of the guy dunking his baby through the table. And
oh, Lord.
People up
Hey,
here
I have to ask Drew one more question, right? So we talked earlier about the rookie receivers, right? And I don't think Drew ever got his chance to answer. So, and I know you like Higgins too. So I gave Higgins as the guy outside of Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. Who's the guy you're most excited about? That'll be a second-year receiver outside of those 2 guys for next year.
Well, yeah, most excited about. Yeah, Higgins is my guy, but. The guy that I think that came on real strong that got me kind of excited was Mims. And again, I know it's the Jets, but I think with this change of ownership or the change of coaching and then the new offensive coordinator, boy, Mims looked really good. And I don't know what their deal was with getting him the ball in the second half. Maybe it was just a Gase thing. But I think getting away from Adam Gase, getting a change in that locker room, Denzel Mims is going to end up on a lot of my teams.
I like it.
Folks, enjoy championship weekend. If you've got a minute, subscribe to that YouTube channel. Go follow Drew at Drew FBG Auctions. If you have even more of a time, try to explain NBA Top Shot to me because I don't get it, and I don't want to get it. But thanks for hanging out with us here in the off season. Thank you to our guest Drew Davenport from Football Guys. A good time, and we'll have him on again. And everybody enjoy it. Be safe out there. And if you need legal advice, slide into his DMs as well. The guy's a lawyer.
Heck yeah, hit me up.
In his free time. So, all right, for Drew, for Dwain, I am Brian. Take it easy, folks.